48 years ago, a 6-year-old boy in South Philadelphia vanished on his way to the bus stop, disappearing completely without a trace, leaving his family shattered in a way nothing could ever mend. Authorities suspected a nearby store employee, who was present on the exact morning the boy went missing, of being involved, but with no body found and virtually no leads to pursue, the investigation ultimately stalled for decades. Yet, through all those long years, the boy's desperate parents never gave up hope, clinging to the slim chance that the truth was still out there somewhere, merely obscured by time. Then one day, as old files were digitized and re-examined, investigators uncovered a small but extremely crucial detail that everyone before had overlooked. A detail powerful enough to completely turn the case around and shock everyone involved in a way no one could have imagined. Before diving deep into this dramatic story, let us know where you're watching from, and if you like this video, don't forget to hit subscribe. South Philadelphia in 1977 had the look of a typical working-class neighborhood in the city. Rows of connected red brick houses, narrow stoops leading straight to the sidewalk, family stores opening early with the smell of toasted bread drifting along Christian Street. Adults started their morning shifts, kids prepared for school, and every movement unfolded in a familiar, steady rhythm, rarely disrupted. In that setting, the Rourke family home sat in the middle of a tightly packed row of houses, where everyone knew each other's names and daily habits, creating a sense of closeness and what seemed like absolute safety. That morning, the sky was still hazy with thin fog when 6-year-old Michael Rourke left home to head to the bus stop. The boy carried a small backpack, stepping down the stoop with the usual innocence of a child who knew the neighborhood like his own backyard. The distance from home to the bus stop was just 2 blocks, a short route Michael had walked with his mother many times and was now allowed to do alone. The mother stood at the door watching her son cross the first curb, following him with her eyes until he turned toward the corner of 8th and Christian, then went back inside to start her own morning. A few neighbors and the nearby store owner later recalled seeing Michael standing at the bus stop, a sight so ordinary that no one paid much attention for long. The boy standing alone, holding his backpack strap, eyes looking down the street, as if waiting for the familiar bus. No one heard a cry for help, no one saw a struggle, and no one remembered anything unusual happening in the area at that time. In the afternoon, the bus dropped off students as usual. The kids poured out, running toward the scattered low-rise homes throughout the neighborhood, but Michael was not among them. The mother initially thought maybe the boy had wandered to a friend's house or missed the bus, but as time passed without any sign of him, the worry grew sharply. A call to the school quickly confirmed what stunned her. Michael had never boarded the bus that morning. In that moment, the small house on Christian Street seemed to sink into silence. Every simple explanation collapsed, leaving a sense of unease that overpowered any rational thought. The family searched the nearby area, asked neighbors, retraced the path to the bus stop, but found no trace of the boy. When their own search efforts yielded nothing, and darkness began to fall over the neighborhood, the family had to make the decision no one wanted: call the Philadelphia police to report that their son was missing. When the missing person call came into the dispatch, the nearest Philadelphia Police Patrol unit was immediately sent to Christian Street, where the Rourke family was still in a state of confusion after hours with no sign of Michael. The first thing the authorities did was take direct statements from the boy's parents and begin filing a child missing report under emergency protocol. Basic questions were asked right in the living room: when Michael left home, what route he took, where he was last seen. The family's information completely matched what a few neighbors remembered about that morning, allowing police to quickly pinpoint the critical time frame to focus the investigation: the short period from when he appeared at the bus stop until no one saw him anymore. Right after the initial report was completed, an investigator from the Missing Persons Unit was assigned to take over the case. This person reviewed all statements from the family, ensuring no detail was missed. Police also clearly mapped out Michael's usual walking route from the front door on Christian Street straight to the bus stop at the corner of 8th and Christian. This was a short stretch with relatively steady foot traffic in the morning and no complex intersections or construction sites. This made a 6-year-old child vanishing on this route even more alarming, as the chances of him veering off in another direction unnoticed were very low. With the route clearly established, police split into 2 investigation teams. The first was tasked with walking the entire path from home to the bus stop, checking areas that might have been overlooked, like alleys, backyards not visible from the street, or spots obscured between the tightly packed rows of houses. The second returned to the bus stop to interview in more detail those living nearby or who had passed through that morning. The goal was to find any information showing Michael had left the stop in another direction or that someone had approached him during that time. In parallel with those 2 directions, an officer was sent to contact the bus driver and the SEPTA office to verify if Michael had boarded. The morning student list, the driver's statement, and feedback from other kids on the route all confirmed the same thing: Michael did not appear at any stop and never got on the bus. This information was quickly relayed to the investigation team and became a deciding factor in the initial assessment. If Michael didn't get on the bus, didn't return home, and no one saw him leave the stop, then the possibility of him leaving on his own was virtually non-existent. Combining all the data collected in the first few hours, police assessed this as a situation likely involving the child being led away or approached by someone against his will. From this key assessment, the initial investigation steps continued to expand in the direction of clarifying what happened in the very short time Michael was standing at the bus stop with no one seeing him anymore. After determining that Michael never boarded the bus and vanished in a very short window between appearing at the stop and no one seeing him, the investigation team began reconstructing the entire morning sequence in chronological order. This was a crucial step to pinpoint exactly the time gap where the incident could have occurred, while allowing police to identify blind spots or areas missed in the initial search. Based on the family's statements, Michael left home at his usual morning time, just a few minutes before the bus arrived. The 2-block distance from home to the bus stop was relatively short, so police could estimate quite accurately the time frame he was at the location. The neighbors who saw Michael waiting described times very close to each other, creating a timeline with little room for the boy to go far or veer off on his own. From there, police could establish 3 key markers: the time Michael left home, the time he was seen at the bus stop, and the time the bus arrived without him there. These 3 markers formed a time band so narrow that reconstructing the events became especially urgent. Based on those 3 markers, the investigator began analyzing the route Michael took every morning. The stretch from the home on Christian Street to the corner of 8th and Christian had no complex intersections, just a few small cross points allowing pedestrians to turn into alleys or side yards next to the adjoining row houses. Police marked these points on a neighborhood map and assessed the likelihood of Michael being approached in areas with less visibility. The cross points were not many, but still posed enough possibility to require careful examination. One of the focal points identified was the gaps between rows of houses, where families often left trash cans, bicycles, or old items. These spots were not directly in view from the street, and if an adult intentionally approached the child there, the incident could occur without passers-by noticing. Additionally, police analyzed movement patterns by time. In the morning, traffic of commuters and students on Christian Street was quite high, but not every segment had wide visibility. If Michael stood just a few steps off from where a neighbor saw him, or if a temporarily parked vehicle blocked the view, subsequent witnesses would not have been able to observe him. This led police to pay special attention to positions where vehicles were parked along the curb during the time Michael appeared. Some vehicles were noted as belonging to local residents, but strange cars were mentioned sporadically in statements. Police could not yet conclude anything from this information, but identifying parking conditions at that time was necessary to understand the space where the incident occurred. In parallel with identifying cross points and blind spots, the investigation team also reviewed all statements related to strangers appearing near the bus stop. A few residents in the area said they had seen an unfamiliar man standing near the corner that morning, but their descriptions varied. Some said the man was leaning against a lamppost. Others said they saw him pacing back and forth along the curb. Some were unsure if the time they saw him overlapped with when Michael was waiting. This lack of consistency meant the investigation had to treat each statement cautiously, not rushing to any hypothesis about a connection between the strange man and Michael's disappearance. However, the fact that multiple people mentioned a stranger's presence in a close time frame was noted as a factor to follow in subsequent steps. To reconstruct the events fully, police also had to consider the possibility of Michael changing direction on his own, though this was initially rated low. The route to the bus stop was relatively straightforward, and Michael had walked it with his mother many times before, but police still examined the case where the boy might have been distracted by something causing him to leave the main path. Areas that could attract a child's attention, like small stores, playgrounds, or neighbors' pets, were added to the review list. However, no witnesses saw Michael leave the bus stop area, and there were no signs he had entered any of those locations that particular morning. Reconstructing the morning events helped police narrow down the time Michael vanished, but to understand what could have happened in that brief gap, the investigation team had to conduct a direct survey of the area around the disappearance point. Right after completing the initial analyses, forces were deployed to the entire area surrounding the corner of 8th and Christian, where Michael was last seen. The goal was to check every meter of space potentially related to the disappearance, from the sidewalk, house fronts, to backyards and alleys out of sight. The area around the bus stop was part of South Philadelphia's characteristic structure, rows of adjoining houses built close together, creating narrow gaps leading to backyards or spaces between homes. These gaps were often just wide enough for a person to pass through, making them key locations in any disappearance near residential areas. Police checked each small alley, using flashlights to shine into dark corners and recording the condition of each spot. Some alleys led to cramped backyards where residents left trash cans, bicycles, or old items. These positions could become blind spots if someone approached Michael without wanting passers-by to notice. However, after checking all the gaps in nearest backyards, police found no physical signs like drag marks, dropped items, or evidence of a struggle. From the alleys and backyards, the investigation team moved to surveying the entire street front where Michael waited for the bus. They checked every section of sidewalk for any unusual traces. In the morning, the area was usually busy with foot traffic, but by the time police arrived, most daily activities had returned to normal, making trace detection even harder. Some scattered small items on the sidewalk were noted but quickly ruled out, as they did not belong to Michael or relate to the disappearance. Still, scrutinizing every small detail was necessary to ensure nothing was missed. Some investigators continued from house fronts to the backs of buildings to check areas not visible from the street. This was the most time-consuming part of the survey because South Philadelphia home architecture often had clearly separated fronts and backs, divided by wooden fences or low brick walls. Every backyard was checked. Every door leading to an alley was tested, and large trash cans were also inspected to rule out Michael being hidden there. The survey results showed no backyard with unusual disturbance, no torn fabric, strange footprints, or any object that could suggest a link to Michael. Afterward, the investigation team expanded the survey area to a few more houses on Christian Street and part of 8th Street. They observed paths leading to basements or low ground-level vents, positions sometimes exploited if someone wanted to pull a child into a house without drawing attention. However, all check basement doors were locked tight or covered with iron grates. Police recorded the condition of each spot, but no door was unusually open or showed signs of tampering. This led the team to conclude that if there was coercion, it did not happen right at one of the exposed basements near the bus stop. While surveying the backs of the house rows, police also paid attention to large trash cans, often placed in alleys, as these could reveal discarded items or movement traces. Each can was opened and checked, though this was a task rarely yielding results in child disappearances. As expected, No items matched the description of what Michael carried that day. However, noting the absence of traces had its own value, as it indicated the boy was likely not pulled into a back alley and did not drop any items along the way. During the survey, the investigation team paid special attention to businesses near the disappearance point. The small shops, eateries, and family stores scattered around Christian Street could have seen Michael pass or stand nearby that morning. Each business was asked about opening hours, staff present, and whether anyone saw Michael in the time from when he left home until the bus arrived. Most store owners were busy preparing for the morning and did not remember details. Some only glimpsed children in the area, but could not confirm if it was Michael. Among the businesses reviewed, Glover's Market, a family grocery store near the bus stop, was placed on the list for closer scrutiny by police. The reason was the store's special location. It sat right at the corner Michael had to pass to reach the stop. The store's back door opened to a narrow path leading to a small backyard and adjoining a wall section of the next row house, creating an area with little attention. Police noted this structure in the report and decided a deeper look into the store's activities that morning was needed, including how many staff were present and if the back path was used at that time. The on-site survey results showed no clear physical traces indicating what happened to Michael, so the investigation team shifted focus to gathering statements from residents living around Christian Street. For disappearances in densely populated neighborhoods, information from locals is often the most important data source, even if sometimes vague or fragmented. The investigators thus split into small groups, knocking on doors to ask if anyone had seen Michael or anything unusual that morning. First, they returned to the houses right next to the bus stop. Some residents said they had seen children walking through the area as usual that morning, but no one could definitively say they saw Michael after the last witness confirmed the boy standing there. A man living in the house across from the stop said he heard children talking that morning, but could not identify if it was Michael or other groups of students heading to school. Police recorded every detail, even if it did not provide a clear investigative direction. Information gathering continued to expand to houses on both sides of Christian Street and the start of 8th Street. Many residents said they were busy heading to work or preparing family routines that morning and did not pay close attention to passers-by. However, some remembered seeing a few strangers near the bus stop. Statements about these strangers did not fully match, but there were some similarities. A woman said she saw an unfamiliar man standing a few meters from the stop, seemingly watching the street. Another remembered a man walking slowly along the nearby sidewalk. These descriptions were not detailed enough to identify anyone, but the fact that multiple people mentioned a stranger's presence made police pay special attention. In parallel with collecting descriptions of the stranger, police also asked residents to provide information about any unusual vehicles that appeared that morning. A few remembered seeing a dark-colored car parked near the corner of 8th Street around the time they left home, while others mentioned an old pickup truck driving slowly through the area. These descriptions did not fully agree on color or model, but all were recorded. An initial list of strange vehicles thus gradually took shape, though it remained very vague. Collecting such descriptions was necessary so police could cross-reference with vehicle registration data in the area or locate drivers who might have witnessed something they did not realize was important. During the interviews, some residents provided information suggesting Michael might have been approached by someone. A woman living one house away from the stop said she had a feeling she saw a strange man bending down near a child. But since she only glanced through while pulling the curtain, she was not sure if it was at the same time Michael was waiting. Similarly, another resident said he saw a figure standing a bit closer to the bus area than usual, but could not describe it clearly. Although these statements were not strongly confirmatory, they still helped police envision the possibility that an adult had stood close enough to Michael to interact with him. In many missing person cases, a single witness can provide a crucial account of the child leaving the last known position. But here, no resident claimed to have seen Michael leave the bus stop. No one remembered seeing him walk into an alley, cross the street, or head in any other direction. Those who saw Michael that morning only remembered him standing there, and then no one saw him anymore. This gap made police focus even more on the possibility that the boy was approached and led away in a very short time. When the investigation team reviewed all the collected statements, they realized that although the information from residents was scattered and inconsistent, there were still some valuable common points. Many mentioned the appearance of one or two unfamiliar men in the area that morning, which was rare in a neighborhood like South Philadelphia, where people knew each other's faces. A few accounts even suggested the stranger had stood near the bus stop at the exact time Michael was there. Though it could not yet be confirmed as an accurate lead, the repetition in descriptions helped police understand they needed to scrutinize more closely individuals not living in the area, but who had appeared during that critical time frame. After completing the round of resident interviews and gathering fragmented pieces of information about the stranger's presence, the investigation team moved to the next step, expanding the search beyond the immediate area around the disappearance point. This became necessary because Michael was clearly no longer in positions directly observable around Christian Street and 8th Street, and if the boy had been taken from his initial spot, the search plan had to extend to multiple blocks, toward areas where an adult could easily lead a child away unnoticed. The search radius was expanded outward from the bus stop in all 4 directions, though the southern and western areas were prioritized due to the street layout having more alleys and vacant lots. Police split into small groups and began sweeping each street segment, from house front sidewalks to corridors between adjoining row houses. For each block, they noted the condition of alleys, checked open doors leading to basements, and if any door was unlocked, they asked the homeowner for a quick inspection to ensure no spot was missed. One of the first areas of focus was the railroad track running parallel to Passyunk Avenue, a few blocks from the disappearance point. The tracks were often a place children were curious about, but also an area where a strange adult could take a child with less chance of being noticed due to visibility blocked by homes and metal fences. The search team walked along the tracks, observing both sides, examining low bushes and piles of leftover materials. This group found no trace indicating Michael had been there, but ruling out this location helped narrow the search and reduce the possibilities to consider. The next areas checked were scattered vacant lots in the neighborhood. These could be old demolished house foundations or unused parcels. They were often overlooked and had soft soil easy for footprints, so police searched meticulously for signs of disturbance. A few lots had adult and child footprints, but the timing could not be determined to conclude if they related to the disappearance. These prints were recorded, but not yet enough to become leads. In addition to vacant lots, abandoned or under repair houses were also added to the checklist. Some homes nearby had been vacant for months, with windows boarded up and front doors loosely locked. Police had to break locks on some doors to enter because they could not rule out Michael being led into such an enclosed space. Inside the abandoned buildings were messy, empty rooms, full of dust and scattered items. Though these places looked suspicious, the investigation team found no physical signs suggesting Michael had been brought there, no children's items, no fresh footprints, no disturbance in the thick dust on the floor. As the search radius gradually expanded eastward, one investigation group discovered a small alley connecting 2 blocks. This alley was obscured by a high fence and a half-open iron gate leading to the trash area for households in the back. It was one of the limited visibility points police had identified from the morning event reconstruction, so they focused particularly on thoroughly checking this alley. While sweeping every narrow corner, an investigator spotted a small object lying against the brick wall, obscured by a large metal trash can. It was a blue plastic keychain, an item the Rourke family confirmed Michael always carried, attached to the zipper pull of his backpack. Though the backpack itself did not appear at the scene, this keychain alone was the first specific item found in the search. The discovery location was a few blocks from the disappearance point, in a place a 6-year-old was unlikely to reach on his own in such a short time. This made police consider the possibility that the keychain fell off while Michael was being moved. When the item was collected and sealed, police immediately recorded the time, location, and surrounding conditions. There were no clear footprints nearby, and the area had no surveillance cameras, which was common in 1970s Philadelphia. However, finding an item belonging to Michael in the expanded neighborhood radius was a significant advancement. It confirmed the search was expanding in the right direction and that the boy or his belongings had been moved from the bus stop area. The investigation team surveyed around the alley, trying to find other items but recovered nothing more. However, the keychain's appearance was enough to strengthen the hypothesis that Michael did not leave the bus stop voluntarily, but was very likely led away. This helped police consider expanding the search in other neighborhood directions, while emphasizing the need to re-examine every area they had not yet checked thoroughly. Though no conclusions could yet be drawn from the newly found item, the investigation team viewed it as the first sign that Michael had left his initial position involuntarily, and this small clue would become a key factor in directing the work in the subsequent search steps. The discovery of Michael's keychain in the alley east of Christian Street created a crucial turning point, forcing the investigation team to expand in another direction parallel to the search efforts, scrutinizing individuals with dangerous histories living in or frequently appearing in the area. In child disappearance cases, especially when there was evidence the child might have been taken from the initial position, reviewing records of those with prior offenses involving harm to children was an essential step. Philadelphia in the 1970s had a non-modern record-keeping system, but police still had lists of individuals arrested or investigated for crimes related to harming children in each city district. Filtering and reviewing this list became the investigation group's next priority. The officers handling records started by gathering data from the local precinct and old reports within a 1-mile radius of the disappearance point. This radius was considered reasonable because those with dangerous behavior often operated not far from where they lived or stayed temporarily. Moreover, the 1-mile range covered a large part of the South Philadelphia residential area, ensuring any individuals who could access Michael's bus stop that morning were included for review. The initial list included some with minor prior convictions for disorderly conduct or nonviolent crimes, who were quickly eliminated from suspicion. Investigators focused on records directly related to harassment, luring, or assault on children in the previous decade. Some on the list had moved away, some were serving sentences or deceased, but a few individuals still lived in the area or showed signs of moving around South Philadelphia near the disappearance time. When reviewing the list in detail, the name Raymond Salazar stood out as one needing immediate consideration. Salazar was homeless, frequently moving between small neighborhoods around South Philadelphia, and sometimes camping on vacant lots near the railroad tracks. Salazar's record showed he had been investigated for approaching minors at a park not far away a few years earlier, though the case lacked evidence for prosecution. Additionally, multiple small reports from residents in various city areas mentioned seeing Salazar loitering near playgrounds or schools at unusual times. This made him a high-risk individual within the scope police were reviewing. The investigation team noted that Salazar had a habit of constant movement and rarely stayed in one place long, making long-term tracking difficult. However, some residents around Christian Street had mentioned seeing an unfamiliar homeless man that morning when Michael disappeared. Though resident descriptions did not fully match, a few details, like a thin build, scruffy beard, and slightly limping gait, fit Salazar's appearance. Police thus marked him as a potential suspect needing early contact to clarify his presence in the area that morning. The investigation group began checking locations Salazar frequented during the day, including a small park corner, the railroad track section near Passyunk Avenue, and an abandoned warehouse where he had been found sleeping overnight. They wanted to determine if Salazar was in the area around the time Michael vanished, and if he could have passed through Christian Street that morning. This was an important part of the elimination process, because if Salazar could prove he was not in the area, police could remove him from the suspect list and focus elsewhere. At the same time, police checked reports related to Salazar in recent months to see if he had caused disturbances or been noted by other patrol units. A few reports said Salazar had been warned for sleeping in a resident's backyard or chased from a vacant lot, but none indicated he had approached children in the area in the weeks near the disappearance. Still, his wandering behavior and presence in multiple neighborhoods made police cautious. When connecting the data on where Michael's keychain was found with Salazar's usual daily movement range, the investigation team noticed a small geographic overlap. Though Salazar had no fixed residence, the area where the keychain was discovered was within a reasonable range a homeless person could accidentally or intentionally pass through. Though no direct link between Salazar and Michael's item could be proven, this coincidence meant police could not overlook him in this investigation phase. However, another factor put Salazar on the main suspect list. He had been spotted loitering near Glover's Market a few months earlier. Although residents did not mention him causing trouble or specific behavior, his appearance near one of the locations police were focusing on made the investigation team see the need to clarify whether Salazar was in the area on the exact morning Michael disappeared. Identifying a potential suspect did not mean concluding guilt. However, based on past record, movement habits, descriptions from a few residents, and frequented locations, Raymond Salazar became the first person placed under primary suspicion. Police needed to verify his whereabouts on the day of the incident to decide whether to eliminate him or continue deeper investigation steps. Focusing on Salazar at this point gave the investigation team a specific starting point while still reviewing other factors potentially related to Michael's mysterious disappearance. After assessing Raymond Salazar as the most potential suspect in this phase, the investigation team immediately implemented the next step, approaching him to verify his whereabouts and gather direct information. Locating Salazar was not too difficult, as despite being homeless, he frequently appeared around certain fixed spots. Based on resident reports and prior police observations, the first place the investigation group checked was the park corner where Salazar often sat in the mornings. As expected, they found him there, leaning against the fence and organizing the few items in his old cloth bag. The approach was conducted calmly to avoid making Salazar defensive or prompting him to flee. When asked about the morning Michael disappeared, Salazar appeared confused but showed no resistance. He said he did not remember each morning clearly, as his wandering life made days blend together. However, when the investigator asked him to describe where he went or who he met that day, Salazar gave a rather disjointed story. He said he might have passed through Christian Street at some point in the morning, but was not sure if he stood near the bus stop. Such vague answers could stem from Salazar's unstable lifestyle and poor memory, but they could also indicate he was trying to avoid providing specific information. To clarify, the investigator asked more detailed questions, for example, which direction he went, if he met anyone familiar, if he entered any store. However, Salazar's responses remained inconsistent. At one point he said he went toward Passyunk Avenue, at another he claimed he was near the tracks in the morning. Although his demeanor did not give the impression he was deliberately hiding something major, the lack of accuracy in his account did not help police eliminate him. After concluding the initial questioning, the investigation team moved to check Salazar's temporary shelter, an abandoned area near the tracks where he often slept overnight. The spot was just a small plot shielded by a few tarps and scavenged wood pieces, not a fixed dwelling. There, police seized any items potentially related to the morning Michael disappeared: old clothes, torn papers, bottles, a cloth bag containing a few old magazines, and small objects. The seizure was a necessary procedure to check if anything among the items belonged to Michael. The investigation group also thoroughly checked the area around Salazar's shelter. They searched for any traces that might suggest he had carried or handled Michael's possessions: fabric scraps, plastic pieces, ties, or any children's items. However, besides unrelated personal belongings, there were no signs connecting Salazar to the disappearance. This meant that if Salazar was involved, he had left no easily detectable physical traces. Afterward, police asked Salazar to allow inspection of the cloth bag he always carried. Though hesitant at first, he agreed. Inside were just a few miscellaneous items: some dry food, an old lighter, a photo of him when young, and a few torn newspaper pages. Nothing matched the description of Michael's belongings or related to children. Everything was recorded and returned to him, except for a few small items seized for further lab examination, though their investigative value was very low. After completing the inspection of the shelter and personal belongings, the investigation team reviewed all data related to Salazar. They cross-referenced the locations he frequented with the map of the area where Michael's keychain was found, but the geographic overlap, though present, was not strong enough to draw any conclusions. Salazar could have been near that area that morning, but there was no solid evidence proving he approached Michael. Additionally, no witness directly saw Salazar near the bus stop on the morning the boy disappeared. Resident statements only described a stranger with a few general features, but not detailed enough to confirm it was him. Meanwhile, Salazar's presence near some stores around Christian Street in the prior period only showed he moved around the area a lot, not that he appeared exactly when Michael vanished. All these factors forced the investigation team to acknowledge that, although Salazar was a potential suspect and could not be completely ruled out, they had not found any physical evidence or direct testimony showing his involvement. The key in this phase was to avoid hastily assigning blame to someone just because they fit a few vague descriptions. Therefore, police noted Salazar as a suspect to monitor and continue verifying, but there was no basis to place him under formal suspicion until more specific information or evidence emerged. After the examination of Raymond Salazar yielded no results strong enough to shift the investigation, the team handling Michael's disappearance had to return to other leads. At the same time, an internal assessment was made. If Michael's disappearance happened quickly, in a very narrow time window, in an area with steady morning foot traffic, then individuals present at businesses near the bus stop were a group needing serious scrutiny. This led to the next investigative step, reviewing the full list of employees working at stores, eateries, grocery shops, and small establishments within close range of where Michael was last seen. Police started by compiling a list of all operating businesses around Christian Street and 8th Street, including small shops like Italian diners, laundromats, repair stores, bakeries, and especially Glover's Market, a grocery store located right near the corner in the exact area investigators had marked as a focal point during the scene survey. The investigation team split up to visit each location, requesting owners to provide employee lists, work hours, and shift schedules for the morning Michael disappeared. Most small neighborhood businesses had few employees, often family members working together. These shops easily provided information, and police quickly ruled out their involvement because none had left the store when Michael was waiting for the bus. Many had only 1 or 2 people working the morning shift, all confirmed by customers or neighbors to have been present continuously throughout that time. However, when the investigation team reached Glover's Market, things became more complicated. This store had more staff than other small establishments due to handling goods, food, and daily necessities for the surrounding neighborhood. The owner, Mr. Glover, provided some employee records, including lists of family members involved in the business, a few part-time workers, and seasonal hires. But right during the record review, the investigator noticed a clear deficiency. Some entries in the time clock log were sketchily noted, especially in the morning shift section for the months near Michael's disappearance. When asked, Mr. Glover said that at the time, the store had hired a few temporary workers to help sort inventory in the mornings, usually local youths or short-term job seekers. He admitted the store's record-keeping system was incomplete because temporary workers often had irregular schedules and some only worked 1 or 2 weeks before quitting. This made verifying who was present the morning Michael disappeared difficult. While reviewing the shift log book, one detail stood out. An entry reading "Stock Boy, Shift AM," appeared exactly on the morning Michael vanished. However, there was no name attached, no signature, and no identifying information. The other weeks in the time clock log all had clear names of family members or permanent staff. But that particular morning had only a short line unaccompanied by any other documentation. This immediately drew the investigation team's attention. A temporary worker present the morning of the disappearance at the very store near the bus stop. But with no identifying record was a serious gap. Moreover, prior statements from a few residents mentioning a strange man standing near the store or around the bus stop area made the presence of an anonymous stock boy a critical detail needing clarification. When asked about this person, Mr. Glover tried to recall but vaguely said the store sometimes hired youths through referrals, and he did not remember every face. He also said incomplete notes might be due to a family member at the counter filling in the log for him. Since the store was always busy in the mornings back then, they did not always remember every detail. No information in the books showed this person returned to work in subsequent days, and there was no signature or address for police to trace. This vagueness made the investigation team realize they were facing an important possibility. Someone present at a key location at the critical time, but leaving no identifying trace in the record system. This was a major gap not only in the investigation, but also in the store's personnel management at the time. Recognizing this deficiency could not be ignored, the investigation team decided to expand questions to Glover's Market's permanent employees. They asked each one if they remembered who worked the morning shift that day. A few recalled a young man helping sort inventory, but no one remembered a name, age, or address. One employee was not even sure how many days he worked. Such fragmented answers did not help police get a more accurate description to track down this person's identity. Nevertheless, the existence of an unidentified stock boy on the exact morning Michael disappeared became one of the details needing deeper investigation. At that point, police could not determine whether this person's presence was mere coincidence or directly related to the case, but the inability to verify his identity was an issue that could not be overlooked in the increasingly complex developments. This pushed the investigation team to expand the search direction related to personnel present near the bus stop the morning Michael vanished. Especially those not on the local resident list, the discovery of an unidentified stock boy at Glover's Market opened hope for a new investigative direction, but after the investigation team thoroughly reviewed permanent employees and witnesses around the store, no one provided clearer information about this person. Those who worked at the store at the time only remembered he appeared for a few mornings, mainly to help move goods. However, no one knew the name, age, address, or exact time he stopped working. The fragmented accounts of him were like a fleeting shadow, very hard to pinpoint and even harder to track. Though the investigation team tried to reconstruct the personnel list using order invoices or delivery schedules, the shop's administrative records were too incomplete to fill the gap. This lack of information caused the pursuit of the Glover's Market direction to stall. Police could not prove the anonymous stock boy was involved, but they also could not rule him out. Meanwhile, other investigative directions yielded no new progress. The strangers mentioned in resident statements remained unidentified. Though police tried to review strange vehicles that appeared that morning, no license plates matched or had enough data to trace. Even checking the railroad tracks, vacant lots, and abandoned houses brought no additional information to confirm Michael had been there. The keychain found in the alley east of Christian Street, though the first physical clue, did not help establish the next direction. There were no other traces in the alley area, no witnesses saw a man or child appear nearby, and no surveillance tools to verify when the item was dropped. This left police only able to hypothesize that the keychain fell while Michael was leaving the initial area, but who took the boy away remained completely unclear. At the same time, reviewing Salazar, the most prominent potential suspect, yielded no physical evidence or direct testimony proving he approached Michael. Salazar's unstable movement habits made it hard for him to remember exact times or places he passed, and his statements were not clear enough to serve as a basis. Though he could not prove his innocence, police also could not prove his involvement. The limitations in investigative conditions at the time, combined with no direct witnesses confirming Salazar's presence near the disappearance point, made placing him under formal suspicion unfounded. As the investigation team continued working, time passing made traces even harder to follow. The first days, the most critical period in searching for a missing child, yielded no results. As subsequent weeks passed without new information, the chance of finding fresh leads gradually diminished. Each new interview only repeated old details. Each area sweep only showed no additional noteworthy signs. In internal meetings, the lead investigator had to face the reality that every current direction had been exploited to its limit. Glover's Market had no additional information. No one clearly remembered the stock boy. The strangers who appeared that morning were not identified. Salazar brought no new clues. No other items of Michael's were found, and most importantly, no witness confirmed Michael leaving the bus stop or appearing anywhere else after the last time he was seen. Though police mobilized forces, swept the area multiple times, and expanded the search radius beyond expectations, no new clues emerged. After a few months, the investigation could no longer maintain its initial pace. Some investigators had to shift to other cases, while those remaining continued monitoring new tips, but most led to dead ends. When there were no traces, no direct witnesses, and no body, Michael's disappearance gradually stagnated. Eventually, the file was moved from active investigation to the cold case category to await new information or a technical breakthrough that could re-examine old data. At that time, classifying the case as cold was not abandonment, but a necessary step when all feasible investigative directions had reached the limits of what the team could achieve. After Michael's disappearance file was transferred to cold case status, it did not vanish from the system but remained stored in the investigation unit's file cabinets. Whenever new personnel joined the department or during periodic reviews, the file was reopened in hopes that a different perspective, approach, or new information could shed light on unresolved details. However, throughout the 1980s, most of these efforts returned to the same point: lack of data, lack of witnesses, and lack of physical evidence to form a new direction. Many young investigators during that period tried starting from reviewing every page of the original file, attempting to find details undervalued or overlooked in the initial investigation. They focused on witness statements, but most people who lived around Christian Street in 1977 did not remember anything additional of importance. When recontacted, too much time had passed to restore clear images in memory. Some families had moved away, others only recalled very faint fragments, completely insufficient for a breakthrough. In many child disappearance cases, reports from other states sometimes became crucial leads. Therefore, whenever information about a child's body found in a neighboring state or an unidentified wandering child was reported, investigation units from multiple locations, including Philadelphia, had the responsibility to cross-check. From the early 1980s to the late 1990s, at least a dozen such cases were sent for review to see if they could be Michael. However, when comparing information, height, age, physical characteristics, time of death, all were ruled out. Some cases even occurred in areas too far away or in unreasonable time frames. Additionally, Philadelphia police received many tips from people in other states claiming they had seen a child resembling Michael. They described encountering a blond boy in shopping malls, at resorts, or in other random settings. Though these reports showed community concern, most were based on fleeting recognition, and when police cross-checked with the families of those children, all were quickly verified as unrelated. Among the re-examined investigative directions, the biggest and most stalling gap remained the unidentified stock boy at Glover's Market. Investigation teams in different phases all agreed that this person's presence on the exact morning Michael disappeared was too important to ignore. However, in the 2 decades that followed, no effort succeeded in verifying who he was. The store's paper record system from that era was very rudimentary, with no copies, no electronic data, and no other agency keeping temporary personnel records for police to trace. They tried reviewing the owner's tax records to see if any payments related to temporary labor hires existed, but found none. Searching community organizations or local youth groups also yielded no results. Investigators at the time even tried to see if anyone in the neighborhood remembered a new youth working, but residents' memories gradually became fragmented and inaccurate over time. No one could describe appearance, age, voice, or any identifying feature of the stock boy. His existence was only recorded by a short line in the time clock log, causing every tracking attempt to end at the same cliff of vagueness. One investigator in the 1990s tried reconstructing the entire morning activity at Glover's Market by locating people who had shopped there, but most customers had left the area or remembered nothing. They could not determine who was in the store when Michael disappeared and could not be sure whether the anonymous stock boy worked other days or only that morning. For nearly 20 years, the file was opened and closed multiple times. Each investigator hoped to see something previous ones had missed, but every clue led to a dead end. No new statements, no new physical evidence, no new technology in that period to support deeper analysis of old data. By the late 1990s, the Michael Rourke disappearance file remained in the same state as when it became a cold case. A child vanishing in a short time, no trace, no direct witnesses, and one person present at a key location, but whose identity could not be determined. Though many investigators tried to change the situation by reviewing the file in different approaches, the case stood still, awaiting something that had not yet appeared at the time, a strong enough clue or a convincing enough reason to reopen the entire investigation in a completely different direction. Entering the year 2000, many new investigative methods began to be incorporated into police unit workflows across the United States. Though resources for cold cases remained limited, the Philadelphia Police Department had a policy of re-examining some long-pending files with a more modern perspective, especially unsolved child disappearances. In an internal rotation assignment, investigator Henry Logan, who tended to focus on logical analysis and consistency checks in files, was tasked with re-examining Michael Rourke's disappearance. This was not a task Logan actively requested, but when he opened the file box and saw the yellowed pages recording the 1977 investigation, he felt a responsibility to thoroughly examine what the previous team had done. Logan began by reviewing the entire initial report, Michael's travel route, witness statements, scene survey maps, and especially the personnel lists at businesses near the bus stop. When reading the section related to Glover's Market, he immediately noticed the detail about the anonymous stock boy, a figure at the very heart of the incident, but shrouded in an information void. According to the records, this person appeared on the exact morning Michael disappeared, working in an area just a few steps from the bus stop, and based on the store's layout, could have been in a position to directly observe where Michael was last seen. With a modern forensic mindset, Logan viewed this not just as a missing detail, but as a critical gap, potentially affecting the entire subsequent investigative direction. He re-examined every document related to Glover's Market, time clock logs, invoices, the owner's statements, employee statements from those years. All confirmed the existence of a stock boy working mornings, but no document contained this person's name or personal information. What puzzled Logan most was why this detail was noted from the start, but not pursued more aggressively in the initial investigation days, a time when all information was still fresh and tracing a temporary employee should not have been as difficult as now. He continued cross-referencing this detail with report pages related to suspect Salazar, as well as strangers appearing around Christian Street that morning. No statements fully matched descriptions of store goods or clothing a stock boy might carry. This meant witnesses who saw a stranger could not confirm if it was the stock boy. Therefore, Logan concluded that the temporary employee was very likely inside the store, but did not appear outside much, or if he did, his presence was not recognized. Logan decided to focus on the single goal he considered the key to the entire file, tracing the stock boy's identity. It was difficult work, but he understood that without this, the case would forever lack a crucial part of the picture. He started by recontacting the former owner of Glover's Market. Unfortunately, many years had passed, and Mr. Glover's memory was no longer sharp. The store owner could only repeat what he had stated nearly 20 years earlier. At that time, the store hired many temporary workers, but since the jobs lasted only a few weeks, he did not clearly remember anyone's face or name. Undeterred, Logan tried contacting those who had worked permanently at the store at the time. Some had moved away, some had passed away, and the remaining few could hardly recall specific details about temporary colleagues. Though a few confirmed the store had hired a young man for the morning shift, they could not describe any other identifying features. This proved to Logan that the stock boy detail was not only lost in the records, but had also vanished from the collective memory of those who worked at the store. Next, he searched other administrative records that might be related, such as tax files or payroll reports from 1976, 1978. But since Glover's Market was just a family business and not required to keep long-term personnel records, tax documents only recorded the store's total taxable income without listing employees by period. Logan tried expanding the search to temporary labor support organizations from that era, but Philadelphia in the 1970s had no record-keeping system like today, making the search completely unfeasible. From a forensic perspective, Logan realized that the inability to verify the identity of someone near the bus stop at the critical time was a serious weakness in the file. This could be the most important witness, or the person most likely to know what happened near the disappearance point. But now, after more than 2 decades, every trace of this person seemed to have vanished completely. Despite reanalyzing the entire file structurally, logically cross-referencing, and scrutinizing every small detail, Logan still found no way to trace the stock boy's identity with available sources. At that point, he had to conclude that this most important detail, the only key capable of changing the investigation's outcome, remained out of reach. What Logan achieved only confirmed that, in the entire disappearance, no detail was more worth examining than the anonymous stock boy's presence, and the failure to verify this person's identity was one of the reasons Michael's file could not progress further in the more than 20 years since the boy vanished. Entering 2010, the judicial and criminal investigation landscape in Philadelphia had changed markedly from 2 decades earlier. The district attorney's office began implementing a comprehensive cold case strategy, prioritizing long-pending child disappearances. A new cold case task force was formed, including experienced investigators, file analysts, and technical personnel trained in document digitization. One of the files placed on the priority list was the unsolved disappearance of Michael Rourke, a case that had dragged on for over 3 decades without significant progress. Michael's file was transferred to the cold case team in early spring. Upon reviewing the thick stack of documents, the new team immediately recognized that one of the biggest obstacles over the years was the lack of a unified storage system. Documents from different periods, scattered paper types, faded photocopies, and handwritten notes made chronological review very difficult. Therefore, the first step was not content analysis, but reorganizing the entire file to modern standards. With technical department support, the cold case team digitized all case-related documents. Hundreds of pages of notes, scene photos, statements, maps, and internal reports were scanned, arranged chronologically, labeled, and converted into a searchable electronic database by keyword. This digitization process enabled the investigation team to discover documents previously not thoroughly examined. One of them was a set of archived files from the City Planning and Construction Department, clipped in the section related to Glover's Market. In that set was an original architectural drawing of the building housing Glover's Market, drawn in 1977, the exact year of Michael's disappearance. The drawing was old, yellowed paper with torn edges, but the main lines were still clear. Upon close examination, the cold case team discovered that the building's structure in 1977 differed significantly from the current store layout. Specifically, the back of the building once had a steel emergency exit door leading to a narrow alley connecting 2 blocks. This emergency exit did not exist in the 2010 current state. The spot was now just a solid brick wall, with no door or clear signs it had ever been an exit. The discovery of the original drawing drew the investigation team's attention to the area behind Glover's Market, previously assessed as relatively enclosed with no direct exit. If in 1977, the building truly had an emergency exit to the back alley, this meant anyone inside the store or the back area could access the alley without going through the front. More importantly, this alley was where Michael's keychain had been found 3 decades earlier. To verify this information, the investigation team compared the 1977 architectural drawing with old scene photos. Some early investigation photos did not focus on the store's back, but in one panoramic shot, the cold case team noticed a detail once considered unimportant. A section of the back wall had a different brick color from the rest, as if it had been filled in. This position matched the emergency exit in the 1977 drawing. Continuing to review documents, the cold case team found a 1984 note from the construction department files mentioning the store owner requesting permission to repair and adjust the back building structure to meet food safety standards. This could relate to removing the emergency exit, though records from that time did not require detailed construction notes like today. Thus, the document only proved the building structure was altered around the mid-80s, matching when the emergency exit might have been bricked over. For the cold case team, this was highly valuable information. It showed that the area behind Glover's Market, previously seen as unrelated, could have been a key location the morning Michael disappeared. The later removed emergency exit might have been part of normal architectural changes, but it could also have played a role in moving or concealing traces. Discovering this emergency exit forced the investigation team to reevaluate the entire 1977 events. If the exit existed, the anonymous stockboy present at the store that morning could access the back area unnoticed. And if any interaction between Michael and someone inside the store occurred, the back alley would be the most direct connection point. From a modern forensic perspective, this discovery was not conclusive evidence, but a detail capable of changing the case approach. The cold case team noted the emergency exit discovery in the summary report, viewing it as a factor needing deeper investigation in the next step. Rediscovering a forgotten part of Glover's Market structure brought the Michael Rourke case into a new phase, where things thought buried in the past suddenly resurfaced, opening the possibility that much about that 1977 morning remained unclarified. Discovering the former emergency exit behind Glover's Market forced the cold case team to re-examine the investigative focus unsolved for 3 decades. The morning temporary employee, who appeared exactly when Michael vanished, but whose identity was never verified. After reorganizing the entire file and standardizing data, the investigation team understood that without tracing this stockboy, the event picture would forever lack a crucial piece. For the first time since 1977, they had access to record sources previous generations never had: tax data, temporary labor files, Social Security Agency documents, and digitized administrative records from the past 2 decades. The team started with the store owner's tax reports for the incident year. Most records only showed general expenses, but in the 1977 return was a small line item for payment to a seasonal helper. No name attached, but this was the first financial trace related to the stockboy position. From this payment, the cold case team moved to tracing small wage records from the same period. Some data from youth labor support organizations near South Philadelphia was reopened, allowing the team to filter lists of those who registered for part-time work in the 1970s. When cross-referencing that list with 1977 residency information around Christian Street, one name stood out: Elias Medina, born 1959, raised in the Puerto Rican area of South Philadelphia. Records from a nonprofit confirmed Elias was referred to a grocery store on Christian Street in early 1977 for temporary work. Though the document did not specify the store name, the location matched Glover's Market. Temporary income records for Elias that year also showed wages matching the seasonal helper expense Glover declared. From these intersecting data points, the cold case team had sufficient basis to determine Elias Medina was the anonymous 1977 stockboy. With identity established, the team focused on Elias's behavior and work history in subsequent years. Elias had no criminal record, but a characteristic behavior pattern: avoiding customer-facing positions, often seeking only loading or back-of-store work. Employment records showed Elias changed jobs constantly, never staying long at any establishment. No workplace described Elias as disruptive, but most noted he avoided contact, worked quietly, or preferred the back. These descriptions were not evidence of Elias's involvement in the disappearance, but helped the cold case team see a behavior pattern fitting someone accustomed to low visibility areas, like the back of Glover's Market in 1977. Reviewing movement history, the team discovered Elias moved to Camden, New Jersey in the early 1980s and worked at an old logistics facility, now closed. According to a former employer, Elias handled moving goods to the basement and cleaning unused warehouse areas. Since the warehouse's architectural plans showed many hidden alcoves and walls filled in over years, the cold case team decided to probe this area to check if Elias had ever concealed or handled anything in the past. The excavation probe was conducted by the forensic team, focusing on positions showing signs of prior digging or structural intervention. Some areas had disturbed soil, inconsistently patched concrete floors, and wall sections indicating hollow spaces behind. These signs proved the warehouse had been structurally altered, and Elias with access could reach those positions. However, despite checking every soil layer and floor section, no evidence belonging to Michael was found. No body, no children's items, no organic traces indicating this was ever a hiding place. The excavation results thus brought no breakthrough, but could not be deemed unimportant. The cold case team noted that where Elias worked had similarities to the back of Glover's Market, hidden alcoves, discrete movement paths, and the ability to alter structure unnoticed. This reinforced the assessment that Elias tended to choose enclosed spaces, a factor fitting one of the hypotheses raised since discovering the 1977 architectural drawing. Though unable to conclude Elias's involvement level, the cold case team officially completed one of the most important steps in the reinvestigation, establishing the Stockboy's identity that previous generations could not trace for over 3 decades. With this piece, part of the case file structure was reconnected, paving the way for the next step in determining what might have happened that 1977 morning. Establishing the Stockboy's identity, Elias Medina advanced the cold case team far beyond all prior investigative phases. However, identity was just the starting point. The team had no direct evidence showing Elias's involvement in Michael's disappearance. Administrative data, work history, and behavioral signs, though important, were still insufficient to move Elias from potential suspect to central suspect. The cold case team understood that to go further, they needed a completely new information source, something capable of shifting the file's weight, and that happened on a summer afternoon in 2011, when the cold case hotline received an unexpected call. The caller was a middle-aged woman, voice trembling but resolute. She introduced herself as Marisol Rivera, a distant relative on Elias Medina's mother's side. She emphasized she had not dared contact for many years, partly fearing family conflict, partly not wanting to be seen accusing a relative without clear evidence. However, when she read news about the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office restarting a series of cold cases, she felt compelled to reveal what she had kept inside for decades. After verifying the caller's identity, the hotline investigator transferred the call to the cold case team. Marisol began by affirming she knew no specific details about Michael's disappearance, but she clearly remembered one thing. Elias had said words that scared her so much she dared not mention it in the family for nearly 30 years. According to Marisol's account, in the late 1970s, when Elias was still living in South Philadelphia, he had a major argument with a family friend. When provoked, Elias blurted out that he had gotten into trouble with a kid and wanted to forget everything that happened behind the back door of some rundown store. When Marisol heard that, she did not understand the true meaning, thinking it was just the rash words of a hot-tempered young man. But as she described, what Elias said carried a clear sense of guilt, not like insults, but like something he had kept inside too long and let slip in anger. What particularly drew the cold case team's attention were 2 details in Marisol's story. 1. Elias mentioned a kid and late 70s. 2. Elias mentioned the back door of a store. These details perfectly matched the context of Michael's disappearance, especially since the cold case team had just discovered that behind Glover's Market, where Elias worked as a stock boy, there had once been an emergency exit leading to the alley, and this detail had never been publicly disclosed in any media reports for over 3 decades. Since no public source mentioned the back door or the architectural structure of Glover's Market in 1977, Marisol's account became especially significant. This could be indirect evidence that Elias knew about the store's back structure, something only someone working in the back storage would know, and more importantly, Elias mentioning harming a child at a time coinciding with the year Michael disappeared gave the cold case team, for the first time, a verifiable link between Elias and the case. Recognizing this as a tip with potential to change the file's direction, the investigation team arranged a direct meeting with Marisol to take a formal statement. In the nearly 3-hour interview, she recounted the details of the argument that occurred in 1978 or 1979. She could not remember the exact time, but clearly recalled Elias looking very confused and scared, as if hiding something he himself did not want to mention again. When asked what Elias specifically said, Marisol repeated the sentence she remembered most. "I don't want to be reminded of that anymore. I hurt that kid. It all happened behind that rundown store. I just want to forget." The cold case team noted that these words were not enough to conclude Elias harmed Michael, but the alignment between the account and secret file information could not be ignored. To ensure no distortion, the investigation team considered whether Elias might have referred to another child in a different context unrelated to Michael. But after extensive reviews, they found no reports of any incident involving a child victim linked to Elias in any documents from the 1970s to 1980s. This made the similarity between Marisol's account and Michael's disappearance even more significant. Additionally, Marisol provided more information about Elias's personality in the years after he left Philadelphia. She described Elias as having erratic moods, often suffering from insomnia, and avoiding family gatherings. She said, "Elias never wanted to talk about Philadelphia again, and whenever someone mentioned the place, he became uncomfortable or anxious." Though this information was not accusatory, it fit the behavior pattern of someone carrying a major secret or involved in a psychologically traumatic event. After recording the entire statement, the cold case team analyzed whether the details Marisol provided could be known by anyone else. Their conclusion was clear. There was no way Marisol could know the store backdoor detail unless she heard it directly from Elias. And this was the key detail related to Glover's Market's emergency exit, information only someone working at the store in 1977 would know. With all these connections, timeline, content, store structure, context, and Elias's psychology, the cold case team officially moved him from potential suspect to the central suspect in the case. This was the first major shift in the file since 1977. However, though Marisol's tip was highly significant, the cold case team understood that family testimony could not be considered conclusive evidence. They needed to continue exploring what Marisol knew, verify every detail, and assess whether Elias had revealed anything more in later years. But it could not be denied that Marisol's call had completely changed the investigative direction. From vagueness, the case now had a central figure, a potential motive, an indirect admission, and a connection matching a critical, undisclosed detail. From that moment, the Michael Rourke file was no longer a stagnant cold case in a filing cabinet. It had entered a completely new phase, with Elias Medina at the center of every subsequent step. After Marisol Rivera's call and the valuable statement she provided, the cold case team understood the case had reached a critical turning point. From just a potential suspect, Elias Medina now became a subject requiring close monitoring. However, to obtain an arrest warrant, the team needed more than family testimony. They had to build a legally convincing file based on objective evidence, behavioral cross-referencing, and full verification of Elias's presence the morning of 1977 when Michael disappeared. The first step was tracking Elias in the present. In 2011, Elias was in his 50s and living quietly in a rented room in Camden, New Jersey. He worked sporadically in manual labor jobs and had no criminal record. The investigation team implemented secret surveillance to assess whether Elias showed avoidance, alertness, or any unusual behavior related to the old case. The surveillance was not to find new crimes, but to measure psychological stability, reactions to old reminders, and whether he might pose a danger when approached. Over many weeks, investigators noted Elias lived quite isolated. He left home early for work, avoided neighbor interactions, and rarely spoke more than a few words to coworkers. More importantly, when the team performed indirect tests, such as leaving old Glover's Market documents in a newspaper at his door, or casually mentioning a child disappearance case on TV at a cafe he frequented, they observed strong reactions. Elias left immediately or became restless and hurried. Though not accusatory evidence, it helped the cold case team assess that reminders of the past caused Elias unusual stress. The next step was definitively confirming Elias was at Glover's Market during the 1977 morning shift. This was crucial because, despite tax and labor records already collected, the team needed an independent confirmation from other documents to add legality when submitting for a warrant. The cold case team returned to city archives to find any administrative documents related to Glover's Market. Most 1970s records were old, but while checking logs from a waste collection unit at the time, they found a receipt signed by the person responsible for morning deliveries, dated exactly when Michael disappeared. The signature was faded, but after enlarging the copy, the team recognized the script as E.A.S. Medina. This provided independent administrative proof that Elias was present during the morning shift at Glover's Market on the day Michael vanished, a detail no one had previously confirmed. This evidence was considered extremely important as it eliminated any possibility Elias was unrelated or absent from the store at the critical time. In parallel with record verification, the cold case team continued analyzing Marisol's account. Many details she provided, backdoor, kid, late 70s, all matched secret file information never grasped by the media. This made her statement legally more valuable, as it could not be attributed to rumors or press reports. One of the most important was Marisol saying Elias blurted, "It all happened behind that store," perfectly matching the 1977 architectural drawing. The cold case team had only recently discovered, to increase objectivity, the investigation team conducted logical analysis between the architectural drawing, family witness statement, and Elias's work history. They created a simulation diagram of 1977 Glover's Market based on the original drawing, front entrance, main counter area, back storage, and especially the emergency exit to the alley, where Michael's keychain was found a few blocks east. This simulation helped confirm that from the storage area, where the stock boy would work, Elias could move to the emergency exit unnoticed, especially during a busy morning. At the same time, the team cross-referenced Elias's behavior with archived employee records at facilities he worked in during the 1980s and 1990s. Most former acquaintances described Elias as not liking the storefront, preferring hidden areas, requesting early mornings. Some employers said Elias often avoided front exits and preferred side or back doors. This behavioral data was extremely important, as it built a pattern of Elias habitually seeking low-visibility spaces, fitting the disappearance context. The cold case team also reviewed 1970s documents to see if any residents mentioned a young store employee. Some old statements described seeing a young man in the store that morning, but since in 1977 no one saw it as important, records did not note names, only general descriptions. However, when cross-referencing the description, young, thin, dark hair, light skin, with Elias's 1978 ID photo, it became relatively matching. Though not direct identification evidence, it further reinforced the hypothesis that Elias was in the right place at the right time. When compiling all factors, Elias's presence at the store that morning, the secret emergency exit only insiders knew, the indirect admission to family, decades of reclusive behavior, stressed reactions to case reminders, and matching witness descriptions. The cold case team saw they had a tight enough file to submit to the district attorney's office for an arrest warrant for Elias Medina. Though lacking physical accusatory evidence, the investigation team determined the suspicion level had surpassed the initial threshold. By cross-referencing undisclosed documents, historical behavior, and official confirmation of Elias's presence at Glover's Market the morning Michael vanished, the cold case team had sufficient legal basis for the next phase, obtaining an arrest warrant for formal interrogation, a necessary step to clarify Elias's role in that fateful 1977 morning. When the arrest warrant application for Elias Medina was completed, the cold case team and the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office held a final meeting to review all data before submission for judicial approval. The file included not only current investigative documents, but also integrated all new findings, the original 1977 architectural drawing, confirmation Elias worked the morning shift on Michael's disappearance day, family testimony with details matching secret information, and a behavioral model reflecting avoidance and seclusion over many years. Upon reviewing each item, the judge assessed the file had reasonable basis for an arrest warrant to serve criminal interrogation. The warrant was signed on an early fall morning, marking the biggest turning point since the case was closed in 1977. Since Elias resided in Camden, New Jersey, the arrest required coordination between the Philadelphia Police Department, Camden Police Department, and a U.S. Marshals Support Unit. The coordination meeting was held the same day, as the cold case team did not want Elias to have a chance to change residence or flee upon learning the investigation was advancing. According to surveillance, Elias typically left his rental early for work and returned late afternoon, so late night was deemed the most suitable time for arrest without endangering area residents. On the night of the warrant execution, coordinating units gathered at a parking lot about 3 blocks from Elias's rental. Investigators who had spent months surveilling Elias were all present. No one was complacent, though Elias had no record. They prepared for any scenario, especially since a suspect might react unpredictably when arrested. Tactics were thoroughly discussed. The first team approached the door, the second blocked the back in case Elias tried to climb to the roof or escape via rear exit. Around nearly 10 p.m., as streetlights cast shadows on the damp walkway in front of the rental, the execution team moved toward room 3C, where Elias rented weekly. The old rental had narrow hallways and peeling walls, the exact type of place Elias frequented according to former employers. The light in front of Elias's door was still on, and the surveillance investigator reported he had been inside since about 8 p.m., with no signs of leaving. The knock was always the most tense moment. No one knew what would happen behind the door. As the execution team positioned, the lead investigator announced, "Elias Medina, open the door." Philadelphia police coordinating with Camden PD. "We have an arrest warrant." Inside there was a slight shuffling sound, then hesitant footsteps. Elias opened the door just a crack, enough to show half his face. His eyes immediately changed upon seeing the array of badges held up. Without waiting for a reaction, a CPD officer clearly read the arrest warrant. Elias did not resist, but was clearly stunned. He bowed his head, hands trembling as he was cuffed. Officers quickly escorted him out without any clashes with other tenants. Once outside, Elias was immediately transferred to a PPD specialized vehicle for transport back to Philadelphia. That moment was symbolic. After 38 years of the case being frozen, the prime suspect was being escorted across the Ben Franklin Bridge into the city where Michael Rourke vanished on a 1977 morning. In the vehicle, Elias said almost nothing. He asked only one question, softly and hesitantly. "This is about something from a long time ago, right?" The question was not a confession, but it showed Elias understood what had caught up with him. When the vehicle carrying Elias arrived at PPD headquarters, the cold case team was waiting. They were not allowed to interrogate immediately. All procedures had to follow current regulations: health check, rereading Miranda rights, official identity verification, and logging into the file. Though procedural for the investigation team, every passing minute felt momentous. For years they had known Elias only through data, behavior, old records. Now the man was sitting in the isolation room, in the flesh. During file processing, an investigator asked Elias if he needed to contact a lawyer or relative. Elias requested to call a cousin in Camden, not Marisol, but another relative. His voice then sounded drained of energy, no longer guarded as during prior surveillance. The cold case team noted this. It was not evidence, but an important psychological signal before interrogation. The news of Elias's arrest was not immediately released. The Philadelphia District Attorney's Office requested secrecy in the initial phase to avoid affecting subsequent statement collection. But within the investigation force, everyone understood that Elias's arrest alone marked a historic milestone. The first time in nearly 4 decades, the Michael Rourke case advanced a step that the initial investigation generation once thought unimaginable. In the small meeting room where the cold case team gathered after Elias was placed in holding, the atmosphere was silent but heavy with meaning. Investigator Logan, who reopened the file with forensic reasoning in 2000, placed his hand on the old file box, now fully digitized. He looked around at his colleagues and said slowly, 38 years, now we've brought him in here. This is the moment this file has been waiting for since 1977. For the cold case team, Elias's arrest was not just a procedural advance, it was validation of the tireless work of multiple generations of investigators. It proved that seemingly small details, an old drawing, a family statement, a faded signature on a delivery log, when connected properly, could lead to a major turning point. As Elias was taken to the detention room to await interrogation per protocol, the cold case team knew they had shifted the case to a new chapter. The arrest was not the end, but the first step toward finding the answers the Rourke family had waited 38 years for what really happened on that fateful 1977 morning on that small street in South Philadelphia. After Elias Medina was brought to Philadelphia Police Department headquarters, initial procedures were completed within a few hours. Elias appeared silent, exhausted, and almost unresponsive throughout registration, photographing, and fingerprinting. When taken to the cold case interrogation room, a small room with pale gray walls and surveillance cameras, he sat hunched on the chair, hands clasped, eyes not meeting anyone's. Investigator Henry Logan, along with another veteran PPD investigator, handled the questioning. Before starting, Miranda rights were read again. Elias nodded very faintly, almost woolly, confirming he understood and agreed to proceed with interrogation. No one knew how Elias would react, evade, fabricate, stay silent or confess, but the investigation team agreed they had to be steadfast, cross-referencing data step by step, without letting emotions take over. The interrogation began with basic questions: where Elias worked in 1976, 1978, whether he ever worked on Christian Street, if he remembered Glover's Market. Elias answered slowly, but did not deny. I did work at a grocery store, he said. When asked if it was Glover's Market, Elias bowed his head, was silent for a few seconds, then nodded. This detail confirmed another key point. Elias knew the store, knew the area, and admitted working mornings. After nearly an hour of conda, Logan shifted to the core, presenting that the team had determined he worked the exact morning shift on the day Michael Rourke disappeared. Elias shrugged his shoulders, hands visibly trembling. He tried to avoid the investigator's eyes. Logan continued, this time mentioning the emergency exit behind the store, a detail only those who entered the storage area would know. When Logan used the exact words, back door and narrow path to the alley, Elias looked up for the first time, eyes flashing with horror, as if struck at his greatest fear. When asked if he still remembered that path, Elias closed his eyes, inhaled deeply, and said, I know it. The simple answer completely changed the room's atmosphere. Undeniable, he knew the exact 1977 store structure. Seeing Elias starting to waver, Logan recalled Marisol's statement that Elias once said he harmed a child behind a store. Elias shook his head weakly, not objecting, but voice trembling. I don't know why I told her that. Logan, gently but firmly, Elias, this is the time you need to tell the truth. After 40 years, only you know what happened that morning. Silence lasted nearly a minute. Elias raised his hands to cover his face. His shoulders shook slightly. The other investigator beside Logan said nothing, just letting the atmosphere guide. Finally, Elias lowered his hands, eyes red, and sighed, as if releasing what weighed on him his entire adult life. I didn't mean to kill him. I just wanted him inside, so the boss wouldn't yell at me. He was standing right outside the door. I told him to come in. I didn't think it would turn out like that. That was the first confession. Though incomplete, it was a piece the 38-year file never had. When asked specifically what happened, Elias recounted in broken speech. He saw Michael standing near the store. According to Elias, the boy curiously looked inside while he was arranging goods. Elias called Michael over, told him to help or fetch something in storage. When Michael went to the back area, Elias worried the boy would run out or draw attention, so he blocked the door. The boy panicked, struggled, and while trying to keep him quiet, Elias used too much force. He fell. I thought he was just unconscious. I was scared. Elias admitted that in a few minutes of panic, he checked and realized Michael had stopped breathing. Terrified, panicked, and not knowing what to do, he dragged the boy's body toward the storage section. When asked why that area, Elias said, at the time, no one paid attention to the back storage, and the old emergency exit allowed him to go to the back alley without being seen. When Logan asked the most important question, "Where did you take the body?" Elias collapsed, crying silently. It took a long while before he could speak. "In the alley, right behind. The place with the old iron door. I put him there. Then I pulled trash, cardboard boxes. I don't remember how long, but I put him right under the drain pipe. There." The location Elias described matched astonishingly with the original architectural drawing and forensic notes about the emergency exit to the alley. The path bricked over in 1984. The investigation team immediately paused interrogation to mark the statement and prepare warrant procedures to research behind Glover's Market. This time focusing on the exact spot Elias indicated. Immediately, the forensic team was dispatched. The current store had changed much, but according to Elias, the area he described was right behind the bricked-over wall. When removing plaster and bricks, the forensic team discovered signs of a former door gap, perfectly matching the 1977 drawing. Beneath the concrete floor, next to the old drain pipe, appeared a layer of disturbed soil. Though no body was found, understandable after over 3 decades. The forensic team confirmed anomalous soil containing organic trash fragments, rotted cardboard, and signs a heavy object had been placed temporarily, then moved later. This was structural evidence matching Elias's statement. A small child's body had been temporarily placed here before removal by late 1970s waste collection. This forensic result was immediately added to the next interrogation record, fully reinforcing Elias's confession and showing he accurately described a location only someone there in 1977 could know. The interrogation ended with Elias signing a statement admitting the events leading to Michael's death occurred in the back storage and that he placed the body at the old emergency exit in the alley. After 38 years, the confession from the very person at the case's epicenter, matching time, location, behavior, and building architecture, advanced the investigation to a phase the initial generation never reached. No one in the interrogation room said it aloud, but everyone understood that the moment Elias pointed out the 1977 body hiding spot was the piece the Michael Rourke case had awaited for nearly 4 decades. Elias Medina's admission of his role in Michael Rourke's death and pointing out the 1977 body hiding location created a major shock within the investigation agency. However, for the confession to become valid court evidence, prosecutors had to prove Elias's admission was reliable and supported by objective factors. Therefore, after completing the investigation file, the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office decided to charge Elias Medina with second-degree murder and causing death to a minor. In late 2015, the first trial officially began at the Philadelphia District Court. From the first day, prosecutors presented the core argument: Elias's statement did not stand alone, but perfectly matched objective evidence, especially the 1977 architectural structure and forensic signs at the emergency exit behind Glover's Market. Prosecutors emphasized that most details Elias provided, the old emergency exit location, path to the alley, walkway width, drain pipe position, were information not found in media reports and never widely disclosed. This proved Elias could only know these details if he was truly in the store's back area the morning Michael disappeared. In the opening presentation, prosecutors used the original 1977 architectural drawing as the argument center. The drawing was projected large on the screen before the jury, showing an emergency exit exactly where Elias described. Prosecutors also showed images from the forensic survey, the wall bricked over in 1984, disturbed soil beneath, signs of temporary heavy object placement, and structural match to Elias's statement. No one could fabricate these details because no one outside the incident knew it ever existed, the prosecutor concluded. Additionally, prosecutors presented Elias's work history in 1977, 1978, including the E. Medina signature evidence on the delivery receipt from the disappearance day. This was considered independent administrative proof that Elias was at Glover's Market during the morning shift. Next, prosecutors called Marisol Rivera, the hotline tip provider, as a witness. Her testimony about Elias blurting, "I hurt that kid," was seen as proof. He carried a heavy secret for decades. The prosecution built the case with a chain of pieces: voluntary statement, details matching the drawing, forensic signs, historical behavior, and 1977 personnel confirmation. Each piece was not conclusive evidence, but together they formed a unified picture. Elias Medina caused Michael's death and hid the body at the emergency exit behind Glover's Market. However, the defense did not accept the prosecution's story easily. Their strategy from the start was to attack the weakest point every confession-based case faces, whether the suspect's statement was psychologically influenced or suggested. The defense attorney argued Elias was easily influenced, lived isolated, and showed signs of accumulated psychological trauma. They claimed Elias might have formed false memories after years of guilt. The defense cited a psychologist expert, saying long-term isolated people sometimes assign blame to themselves for events they did not cause, especially when feeling guilty about something in life. The defense also argued the hours-long interrogation could put Elias in a compromising state, leading to confessing along investigators' suggestions. They did not deny the details Elias provided, but claimed he could know the old store structure from working there, not necessarily from causing Michael's death. The defense even argued the match between Elias's statement and the architectural drawing was natural, since Elias worked in storage and might innocently recall details the prosecution saw as unknowable. The defense also emphasized no body, no DNA, no direct witnesses, and no physical evidence tying Elias to Michael at death. One of the defense's most effective tactics was focusing on Elias's psychological instability in years after leaving Philadelphia. They presented 1990s mental health records, noting Elias had severe depression. This helped argue Elias expressing guilt over years was not proof of crime, but emotional disorder manifestation. The legal confrontation between sides created a tense atmosphere lasting weeks. Forensic testimony was strong, but lacked physical evidence. Elias's confession faced questions of whether it was fully voluntary and accurate. The jury faced an extremely difficult task, evaluating a statement after nearly 40 years against indirect evidence. As the trial entered deliberation, no one predicted the outcome. Prosecutors believed their argument was strong enough to convince the jury. The defense believed they had sown enough doubt to avoid conviction. The jury deliberated for days, but votes never reached consensus. Some members felt Elias's statement and the architectural drawing were undeniable evidence. Others felt lacking direct proof made conviction too risky. Finally, after many deadlocked discussions, the jury sent notice to the judge they could not reach a unanimous verdict. The judge declared the trial ended with a mistrial hung jury. This decision silenced the courtroom. For the Rourke family, it was a heavy unresolved after nearly 4 decades of waiting. For prosecutors, it was a temporary failure, but not the end. For Elias Medina, the mistrial meant he was not convicted, but also not exonerated. As they stepped out of the courtroom, the cold case team understood that the Michael Rourke case could not yet be closed. They had come further than anyone had in 38 years, but the road ahead still required a second trial, where the truth had to be verified once more. After the first trial ended in a deadlock, the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office immediately convened to evaluate the entire proceedings in preparation for the second trial. The prosecutors understood clearly that a temporary failure did not mean the end. The case file had developed over nearly 4 decades, and if the current framework of evidence was strengthened with advanced forensic analyses and additional testimony, the jury could reach unanimity. The prosecution team's goal in the second trial was crystal clear: to make what happened in 1977 indisputable, even without a body. This time, they did not rely solely on Elias's confession and the original architectural drawings. They added an independent group of forensic experts, including a specialist in analyzing old building structures, a post-crime behavior evaluator, and a cognitive memory expert, to counter the argument that Elias was merely imagining memories that weren't real. Additionally, the prosecutors reached out to individuals who had been part of the small religious group Elias joined in the 1990s. In the first trial, this group had not been subpoenaed, but upon reviewing notes in the case file, the prosecution noticed that Elias had shared a few vaguely repentant statements with 2 members of the group, though without details. The prosecutors decided to subpoena them in the second trial to clarify the nature of those statements. The second trial began in early 2016, just a few months after the mistrial. The atmosphere in the courtroom this time was markedly different, more formal, more rigorous, and everyone knew this could be the last time the case was presented to a jury. Right in the opening statement, the prosecutor emphasized the defendant's testimony does not stand alone. It stands on a foundation of truth, proven by time, architecture, and forensics. The prosecution presented 3 main pillars. 1. The confession matched perfectly with the 1977 structure, a structure that no longer existed since 1984 and had never been publicly disclosed. 2. Elias's behavior after the incident, including avoiding the front of the store, an obsession with the back door, frequent job changes, and living in prolonged stress. 3. Indirect admissions over many decades, confirmed by family members and religious group witnesses. 2 members of the religious group who had fellowshipped with Elias were subpoenaed. The first recounted that Elias had said during a private prayer session that he carried a sin he could not forgive himself for, and a child had died because of him. Notably, this statement was made in 1993, before the media had any news about the possibility of reopening the case, or any information about Glover's Market. The second witness confirmed that Elias had once said, "If I could go back to that alley, I would do things differently." The prosecution emphasized that that alley was an extremely specific detail, matching the alley behind Glover's Market. These statements could not come from guesswork or distorted memory. They contained elements that only someone present at the scene in 1977 would know. In the second trial, the prosecution presented a more comprehensive forensic case. The structural analysis expert described the brick wall sealing the back showed signs of alteration around 1983, 1984. The soil under the point Elias indicated had a layer of disturbed sediment. Broken plaster samples found inside the wall indicated that an emergency exit had existed exactly as in the architectural drawings. Soil compression marks consistent with a heavy object placed temporarily though it could not be concluded what the object was. The experts affirmed that Elias's testimony matched the forensic structure to a degree where random coincidence was impossible. The prosecution particularly highlighted the delivery receipt signed E. Medina on the exact day Michael disappeared. This was considered independent evidence proving Elias was present during the morning shift, a detail the defense could hardly refute. The defense attorney continued to argue that Elias may have been led during interrogation. Long-term memories are easily distorted. Without a body, it was impossible to conclude how the death occurred. They presented that many people could misremember the old store's structure, and that Elias was merely reconstructing the past in a way he believed was true. However, this time the prosecution was thoroughly prepared for rebuttals. A cognitive memory expert was called and affirmed false memories typically err in specific details. Suggested memories cannot accurately recreate architectural elements that no longer exist. In no case of false memory matches forensic elements completely, as in Elias's testimony. This significantly weakened the defense's argument. The prosecutors had learned from the first trial. This time they proactively filled every gap that the jury might view as doubtful. They clarified that no public documents mentioned the emergency exit, so Elias could not have known from the media. No witnesses had ever mentioned the back alley, so Elias could not have gotten the information from word of mouth. There was no possibility Elias guessed correctly. Every forensic detail after 38 years, there was no external motive forcing Elias to confess. Each piece was assembled by the prosecution like rebuilding a new investigative blueprint, more complete, stronger, and far harder to refute than in the first trial. As the trial entered the deliberation phase, the inherent atmosphere of a decades-old cold case re-emerged: silence, tension, and the long-awaited anticipation of the victim's family. But this time, the forensic evidence was more strongly reinforced, the witnesses clearer, and Elias's testimony placed in a consistent context. The jury deliberated for many days, and unlike the first trial, where disagreement reached its peak, this time, the division gradually narrowed. The toughest questions had been answered. Was Elias at the store that morning? Yes. Did Elias know about the undisclosed emergency exit? Yes. Did the testimony match forensics? Yes. Did the repentant statements in the religious group match the context? Yes. On the 9th day of deliberations, the jury sent notice that they had reached a consensus. As Elias was brought into the courtroom, a heavy atmosphere enveloped the entire court. The judge asked the jury, "Have you reached a verdict?" The foreperson stood up, holding the paper trembling slightly with emotion. "Yes, Your Honor. We find Elias Medina guilty of murder." Michael Rourke's family burst into tears. Some investigators gripped hands tightly, knowing this verdict was the result of 4 decades of persistence across generations. Based on the nature of the case, causing the death of a child, concealing the body, and years of non-cooperation, the judge sentenced 25 years to life. Elias stood still, head bowed. No reaction, no resistance. Perhaps in that moment, he understood that the wheel of truth, though slow, always turns in the right direction. The second trial concluded, marking the end of the prolonged saga of the case that had haunted South Philadelphia since 1977. The Michael Rourke case finally had a conviction, late, but a recognition of the unrelenting efforts of those who believe the truth never vanishes. The story of the Michael Rourke case is not just a 38-year journey in search of justice, but also reflects many issues still present in American society today, from child safety, community responsibility, to the value of perseverance in the legal system. One of the clearest lessons comes from the very mistake of 1977, failing to verify the identity of the stock boy at Glover's Market. That small oversight led to a critical clue being lost for decades. In modern life, this reminds us that small details can sometimes determine the entire outcome, whether in investigations, in work, or in how we protect our families. Additionally, The story shows how advances in forensics and digital data can change the game, just as the cold case team in 2010 found the original architectural drawings and reconstructed the structure behind Glover's Market. In American society, where technology is infiltrating every field, the lesson here is that we should not underestimate the power of knowledge and new tools. What cannot be solved today may be unraveled tomorrow when we have better understanding. The story also emphasizes the role of the community. Without the call from Elias's relative, the truth might still be buried. This shows that the courage of each individual, daring to speak up even if it's a family matter, can create major change for society. Finally, the journey to justice for Michael reminds us that a cold case does not mean cold hope. Though the truth is sometimes buried for a very long time, with perseverance and the right approach, it can still be found. This is not just a lesson for investigators, but for anyone striving to overcome adversity. Truth and justice may come late, but they do not disappear. If you want to continue following journeys of case-breaking full of perseverance like the Michael Rourke case, remember to hit subscribe so you don't miss the next stories. Thank you for joining us. See you in the next video, where we continue to explore mysteries that seem to have slept for decades.